Greetings, YouTube. My name is Tylyn Omaru, and I'll be your mistress of rants for this evening. For those of you who are regulars to the channel, welcome. It appears to be crazy commenter week on YouTube, and much as I was dreading the idea of being called in to do a video on something insane posted in the comments, it seems it's my turn in front of the camera. So be it. This is the third video in 4 days dealing with someone jumping off the stern and expecting not to get chewed up by the prop, and as a tight reply to his question would be long enough to make the average creationist roll his eyes into his head and not bother with the reading, we might as well give him something to look at while we're at it. If we're lucky, he'll be too busy paying attention to my manner of dress to realize that he's absorbing the topic of the lecture. Here we are, then. Such a nice new set. It's almost a shame to get blood on the carpet so soon. But alas, it needs to be done. We were working on a response to the poor kid who put up to this garbage, but I suppose you'll do. You wandered in and asked for information on Kenthoven, which was promptly provided by Kage. You then asked for a piece of evidence in favor of evolution, and rather than do the legwork and go watch the videos that were suggested, you elected to beg to be lazy. When you were told that rather than give you an answer on the thread that we would instead make a random rant, you told me to have it, and not be nice. I could be nice and give you a swift and merciful death, but I won't. If you're the seasoned vet you claim you are, then you won't mind if I take your insipid assumptions and ram them back up your ass sideways. Now, you could have done as suggested and checked the videos for material to refute, or read any of the large number of peer-reviewed journals on life sciences for whatever sort of evidence you like. Nature magazine is full of such things. The problem here is that not a one of you can describe the scientific method for me, nor recognize evidence if it bit you on the ass. So then, I'm going to run it down for you in the simplest terms available. Some of it may be a tad oversimplified, but it should get the idea across anyway. I'd give you a detailed description, but I doubt you have the native intelligence to grasp words with more than 2 syllables. Before you accuse me of an ad hominem attack, there's a difference between an attack to discredit your argument, as you've not made one, and an insult, in which I make snarky remarks about you, your lack of mental capacity, and your dubious heritage. I think you're a spastic moron with delusions of grandeur, but that's just my opinion. The scientific method involves taking the observations you have, piecing them together into a hypothesis, and then testing that hypothesis with controlled experiments. If your hypothesis holds up to that level of scrutiny, then you submit it for publication, and if it gets through peer review and additional testing, then it is accepted, although there is often contention. If your science has merit, it will eventually be taken seriously. If you can explain more than the current theory with less complexity, then you can supplant the existing theory. If you make an entirely new claim, your work, along with any confirmatory evidence, become a theory in and of itself. If you're testing an existing theory and what you have expands on it in a useful way, the theory is refined by your work, and the imprint of your work becomes a thing that everyone in your field learns. Some theories are known to be incomplete, as they don't explain some known phenomenon, but does explain everything else we observe. In cases where there isn't a current theory, it's marked as incomplete along with what it doesn't explain, but is accepted in lieu of something better. It even gets used if the more complete theory is more work than is strictly necessary for the task at hand. Sir Isaac Newton wasn't quite right in his theory of gravity, but his theory is still accurate enough for most tasks that his math is of value even in the face of the much more accurate theory of relativity. If gods were predictable enough, and as necessary as the creationists like to claim, then scientists would use them in their work. The theories still work as predicted without needing to factor in gods, and therefore gods aren't of use. It's not a matter of people hating gods, it's simple pragmatism. If I don't have to depend on gods to get the job done, then it's kind of silly to demand they be present. It makes things complex and unpredictable, and that's not a good thing, especially when you're dealing with things that could impact people's lives. Like it or not, they do. Every day and in nearly every way imaginable. Your car, boats and airplanes all use evolutionary concepts during development to make small improvements with each successive iteration. The computer you're sitting at wouldn't work without the discoveries of Nikola Tesla, who discovered how to generate and harness alternating current. The microprocessors that make up the computing power of that machine? Complements of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Each of those advancements underwent a process based on the scientific method, in which solid, concise and simple designs won out over ones that were overcomplicated or simply didn't work. We use the same process in nearly every decision we make. This thing costs a bit more, but does the job more quickly and uses less resources than that one. It's a series of trade-offs. A species of fish that exists exclusively in a dark cave far underground loses the ability to see and its pigments in exchange for better cold resistance, or some other such thing. There is such a creature, and although it still has sockets where its eyes should be, the eyes themselves are missing. I don't recall if they still have their optic nerves or not at this point, but if they were removed from the darkness on a permanent basis into an environment in which there was both light and predators, those that survived to breed for long enough would either see the return of their eyes over a few thousand generations, or develop another sense that could do just as well. Assuming that any survived, that is. From a developmental and evolutionary standpoint, eyes are expensive things, and if you can do without them, then not having them isn't a loss, and what gets expended in making and maintain them can be put to more immediate uses. If you approach it without your biblical glasses, it makes more sense than a magic sky fairy turned sadistic dictator simply poofing stuff out of nowhere, and then only revealing itself to a small tribe of illiterate Bronze Age sheep herders with more imagination than brains that want a line of work that gives them a path to a more lucrative career field with access to free barbecue every Sunday and human women instead of molesting the goats. Some of the claims made in your holy book are ludicrous in the extreme, especially those that make your God out to be a hero. There is no evidence in the geologic column or the fossil record of a worldwide flood, nor records in any of the literate societies of the day, namely that of the Egyptians and the Chinese. For that matter, why would your God reveal himself to the Hebrews? Why not the Chinese, who could actually read and enjoyed a good debate, or the Egyptians, who kept much better records, and could have written it all down in accurate terms that we wouldn't need 1,000,006 translations of a single book? Maybe the Mesopotamians, or the Indus Valley civilizations, who were developed enough culturally to accept the ideas being put forward and make better use of them? I know, it's because it could order them to go on a murderous rampage, kill everyone that might disagree with it, and smile and nod when he told them to settle in the only place in the Middle East where there's no oil. They didn't know any better, after all, and all the pre-existing myths in the area from which that tribe derived couldn't possibly have been used to build the narrative from Genesis, right? Wrong. There were any number of myths that we could identify the elements of that were used liberally in the Genesis account, and like the Genesis account, all have been either abandoned or thoroughly debunked. The Grand Canyon was not carved out by a single event, but by millions of years of water flowing through the region. Rivers change their courses often in terms of geological time, and upthrust and rock folding can not only expose rock that was below the surface thousands or millions of years ago, but push the far end of a structure up higher in some places than others. Enough pressure behind the water and it'll flow uphill well enough. It might not be as deep at the high end, but it'll still move. There's this theory, it's called plate tectonics, and it's been observed year over year by satellite imagery as well as surveyors. For that matter, they check the position of the South Pole every year, and can confirm that Antarctica is moving ever so slowly. Not the magnetic pole, which may change places with the North Magnetic Pole over the next 25,000 years or so, but the position of the piece of land that covers the true South Pole, that is, the one at the very bottom of the planet. The amount of movement in question isn't very much, a centimeter or two a year, but it's enough to measure, and therefore is evidence that the crust is moving around over the molten rock underneath it. For your book to be usable as science, it has to be able to make predictions of a specific event sometime in the future, and give a set of circumstances that can be tested in order to produce that specific effect. You can't look at your book, pick something at random, and tell us that your God was talking about airplanes in Exodus chapter 20. Because it wasn't. The oral tradition from which that book was written was made up from bits of the myths of other cultures native to the region, most of which were wiped out by death fanatics in the name of your God, And no amount of quoting that thing will make it evidence of anything except just how foolish you are for buying into the bullshit. Do you have the slightest idea how much energy it would take to stop the sun dead in its tracks? Or even the moon, which is much smaller? You would release enough energy doing just that one thing to obliterate everything within several dozen light years. The amount of energy expended just to cover the planet from sea level to the top of Mount Everest in 40 24-hour periods would melt Earth completely, with enough left over to blow the moon, Venus and Mars into little chunks orbiting around Jupiter. Well, okay, the debris from Venus would fall into the sun, as that's the closer large gravity well. Okay, fine. If you simply must have a specific example of evolution, you can start with my buddy Tiktaalik Rousseau, which was found based on the predictions made by evolution and geology with the help of evidence from the existing fossil record. The first link below is intended for laymen, but includes all the high points. As a test of evolution, it was very nice. If you want something more direct, you can check out the second link, which is a publicly available paper on human chromosome 2. That was a real challenge to evolution, and if the fusion site had not been found, then it would have been a nasty blow to evolution, and sent scientists everywhere looking for a reason that our chromosome count was wrong. It wouldn't have been evidence for creation, but it would have been suggestive of a different cause for our existence above and beyond that of every other animal on the planet. They found what they were looking for, and that conclusion has been confirmed a great many times since. Which means that you're a great ape, the same as every other creature on the planet with the ability to watch and comprehend this video. Myself included. If it was that way and the choice to be the descendant of an ape or a creature built from dust by an invisible, bloodthirsty, sadistic invisible creature that keeps refusing to smite me for being an insufferable ass to his adherents, then I would much prefer the ape. If you do a response to this video, do please drop by the comments and leave a link so I can take your arguments apart, weigh them on their merits, and use them to hammer you flatter than a Stephanie Meyer protagonist. Wait, I already threatened you with a response of that nature, didn't I? No matter. I doubt sincerely you could come up with a response that will hold up to even the smallest amount of scrutiny, and the academic arena is a harsh taskmaster. Science is a meritocracy, and if you have the cops, you get respect and maybe even fame. If you don't, your eviscerated carcass will be swept off the floor like yesterday's garbage, and rightfully so. Now, stump up or fuck off.